So we got initiated into rudiments of complex numbers, a little bit of algebra, a little bit of polar representation, camouflaged with Euler's theorem, semblance of geometric meaning in terms of the point that represents a complex number z, which is x plus iy, an ordered pair x comma y, and the fact that if a complex number has modulus r and argument theta, then the complex number could be written as r e power I theta. Theta may or may not be the principal value of the argument. E power I theta, which is cos theta plus I sin theta, for all values of theta that are pertinent, principal or not, will produce the same cos theta and the same sin theta, because the theta that leads to the same final position of the rotating line will deliver the same values of cos theta and sin theta. So E power I theta, there is no restriction on whether to use the principal value of theta or any other appropriate value of the argument. So now given a complex number represented by the point P, which has coordinates x comma y, meant to represent a complex number z, which is x plus iy, then this r is modulus of z, which is root x square plus y square. This theta is argument of z, and this argument of a complex number, like I maintain, is a multiple valued function of the very many values that are acceptable towards theta, representing the same final position of the rotating line. The one that belongs to the interval minus pi to pi, greater than minus pi but less than or equal to pi, will be referred to as the principal value of the argument. All positive real numbers lie on this side of the x-axis, right? And these are numbers that have argument 0, plus minus 2 pi, plus minus 4 pi, plus minus 6 pi, and so on and so forth. Even multiples of pi in general, right? Negative real numbers lie on this side, and they have arguments that are odd multiples of pi. These are purely imaginary numbers, I2, I3, I, and their arguments are like pi by 2 for this, and all negative imaginary numbers, purely imaginary numbers, lie here, and they are minus pi by 2. Argument would be minus pi by 2. Argument of 0 is undefined. Argument of 0 is undefined, right? And like I said to you, that the mirror image of P about the x-axis is going to be P prime, which is x comma minus y. And the complex number that represents the mirror image of z is referred to as z bar, which is x minus iy. And z bar has the same value of the modulus r, but its argument is going to be minus theta. So if z is r e power I theta, z bar is going to be r e power minus I theta. As you can see, if I expand e power minus I theta, this is going to be cos of minus theta plus I sine minus theta. Yes or no? Cos minus theta is cos theta minus I sine theta, right? Very clearly, z, which is r e power I theta, is r cos theta plus I sin theta. Do you realize that they differ only in their imaginary parts? They are z and z bar. Also, if z is a complex number, z bar is its conjugate, then z bar is going to be mod z squared. These are two complex numbers, but when you multiply them, you get a real number. Mod z will never be complex. Mod z will always be real, right? Okay, can you tell me, if I ask you this question, argument of mod z squared, what would that be? Assuming z is not the origin, what would argument of mod z square be? Okay, mod z is a real number, right? This is square of a real number. That means it's a positive real number, and therefore mod z square will lie somewhere here, a positive real number, and therefore what would its argument be? 0, plus minus 2 pi, plus minus 4 pi, and so on and so forth. So as long as mod z is not 0, argument of a positive real number, this is a positive real number, will always be an even multiple of pi. Even multiple of pi. That would be the argument of mod z squared. Yes or no, right? Now, I also mentioned to you, if z1 and z2 are two complex numbers, z1 is x1 plus iy1 and z2 is x2 plus iy2, and if z1 equal to z2, then you equate the real parts of both complex numbers, x1 equal to x2, equate their imaginary parts, y1 equal to y2. And I offered to you an algebraic way of looking at it and also a geometric way of looking at it, right? Now, suppose z1 is a complex number, x1 plus iy1, right? And z2 is another complex number, say x2 plus iy2, right? Now what is z1 bar? x1 minus iy1. What is z2 bar? x2 minus iy2, right? Now let me look at what z1 plus z2 is. z1 plus z2 is, if I add these two, it's going to be x1 plus x2 plus I times y1 plus y2. Yes or no? So sum of two complex numbers is a complex number a plus ib. Yes or no? Right? Now, if I have to take the conjugate of this complex number, z1 plus z2 is a complex number. Suppose I have to take the conjugate of this complex number, bar of z1 plus z2. That's going to be, just change the sign here. So that's going to be x1 plus x2 minus I into y1 plus y2. Yes or no? Now let me rearrange terms, x1 minus iy1 and x2 minus iy2. So this is like x1 minus iy1 plus x2 minus iy2. Yes or no? And what is this? This is z1 bar. What is this? z2 bar. Yes or no? So z1 bar plus z2 bar. That means bar of the sum of a number of complex numbers would be sum of their bars. Bar of z1 plus z2, bar of z1 plus z2 is going to be bar of z1 plus bar of z2. That's an important property. Now whatever I have said of addition is also true for subtraction. In a general sense, z1, which you can check independently, bar of z1 plus minus z2 is going to be bar of z1 plus minus bar of z2. Plus for plus and minus for minus. This is what it means. This is a property that we use often. Can I wipe this off? Now, say I have a complex number z1, which is r1 e power I theta 1. What's the modulus of z1? r1. What's the argument of z1? Theta 1. Yes or no? Right? modulus of Z1 is very clearly R1, right? And what is argument of Z1? Theta 1, right? Now suppose I have another complex number Z2, which is R2 e power I theta 2. R2 e power I theta 2. Then what is mod of Z2? R2. What is argument of Z2? Theta 2. Right? Now, let me look at Z1 into Z2. Let me multiply these two out. I get R1 into R2 e power I theta 1 plus theta 2. Yes or no? Right? What is? So, this again turns out to be a complex number. Product of two complex numbers is a complex number whose modulus is R1, R2, whose argument is theta 1 plus theta 2. And therefore, you know, I end up saying Z1, Z2 is a complex number. Its modulus, the modulus of this complex number is R1, R2. But what is R1? Mod Z1. What is R2? Mod Z2. Which gives us another property. Modulus of the product of two complex numbers would be product of their moduli. Would be product of their moduli. Modulus of the product of two complex numbers is going to be product of their moduli. Yes or no? Say for example, I have a complex number A plus IB and a complex number C plus ID. This is a complex number Z, for example. Now, one way I can find its modulus is by actually multiplying. So I get like a AC minus BD. I hope you realize what I've done here. IB into ID is minus BD, right? Plus I into AD plus BC, right? And then I could have said modulus of Z is root AC minus BD whole squared plus AD plus BC whole squared. Yes or no? That's mod Z, right? But I didn't have to do that. In order to find mod Z, it's about mod of A plus IB into C plus ID. Yes or no? Modulus of the product now I can apply is the same as product of their moduli. So this is going to be mod of A plus IB into mod of C plus ID. And mod of A plus IB is root A square plus B squared. Mod of C plus ID is C square plus D squared. Yes or no? I didn't have to multiply and then find the modulus. I could have simply said mod Z is mod of this, and mod of the product of two complex numbers is going to be product of their moduli, which is this property, isn't it? Modulus of Z1, Z2 is mod Z1 into mod Z2. Suppose this is Z1, this is Z2. Then mod of Z1, Z2 is going to be mod Z1 into mod Z2. That's the property that could be deployed. That could be deployed. Yes or no? In fact, noteworthy. After all, then, would you not expect this to be the same as this? Because both represent mod Z. Both represent mod Z. So would you not expect this to be equal to this? Right? That means square of this must be equal to square of this. Both would be mod Z squared. Right? So square of this again is like A square plus B squared into C square plus D squared. That's the square of this. Must be the same as square of this. Why? Because both represent mod Z squared. Yes or no? Hey, therefore, interesting enough, I end up getting an identity. This is an identity. You know, this expression should be identically equal to this expression. This expression should be identically equal to this expression. Algebraically, that's no big deal. You can establish that because you could, if you actually multiply this, you get like a square c squared plus b squared d squared, right? Then a squared d squared plus b squared c squared is what you get. Yes or no? And then what I do, I write this as a square c squared plus b squared d squared minus twice ac into bd, right? And then this is a squared d squared plus b squared c squared plus twice ad into bc. See, they are the same, right? AD into BC is the same as AC into BD. And this is like a AC minus BD whole squared plus AD plus BC whole squared, which is an identity, right? You end up getting an identity. You get a so the tool of complex numbers also gives us such a easy way to express this as sum of two squares without doing a great amount of algebraic magic, right? So much of ease. Algebra deep down, you'll realize, will offer us versatility in algebra, in geometry, in trigonometry, and it's going to be there all over the place, all over the place. These are just some very basic glimpses of what it could do. It's a lot more than what I can show you at this point of time. But shall we proceed? Right? The property that we have learnt as of now is modulus of the product of complex numbers would be product of their moduli. Modulus of the product of complex numbers, any number of complex numbers, would be product of their moduli. In general, mod of z1, z2, z3, zn is going to be mod z1 into mod z2 into mod z3 into mod zn. Yes or no? Right? Very good. Now, now let me, so my z1 was, like I said, I'll remove the clutter from there. So I had like z1, which was r1 e power I theta 1, and z2, that was r2 e power I theta 2, right? Where r1 and r2 were their respective moduli, theta 1 and theta 2 were their respective arguments, right? Now, realize z1, z2 is r1, r2 e power I theta 1 plus theta 2. What is the argument of this complex number? Argument of z1, z2 is theta 1 plus theta 2. But what is theta 1? Argument z1. What is theta 2? Right? So argument of the product of two complex numbers would be sum of their arguments. Argument of the product of two complex numbers, argument of the product of two complex numbers would be sum of their arguments, would be sum of their arguments. Yes or no? Another property, right? And not just for two complex numbers, for any number of complex numbers. Argument z1, z2, z3, zn is going to be argument z1 plus argument z2 plus argument z3 plus argument zn. It behaves like a logarithm, like log abcd is log a plus log b plus log c plus log d. The argument operator, in a certain sense, manifests itself like a logarithmic operator. Log abcd is log a plus log b plus log c plus log d. In a very similar manner, the argument operator is manifesting itself in a very similar fashion to that of a logarithmic operator, right? Now, z1 by z2 is r1 by r2 e power I theta 1 minus theta 2, yes or no? Right? Now, what is this is a complex number, and this is its modulus, and this is its argument, right? So modulus of this complex number z1 by z2 is r1 by r2, right? But what is r1? Mod z1. What is r2? Mod z2. That means the modulus of the ratio is the ratio of the moduli. Modulus of a ratio is ratio of the moduli. So if I had, say, a plus ib by c plus id, which is ratio of two complex numbers, if I have to take the modulus of the ratio, then that would be modulus of the numerator divided by modulus of the denominator, which is root a square plus b squared divided by root c square plus d squared. Yes or no? No? No, no, no. No restriction. No restriction. Now, this is a complex number. And what is its argument? Theta 1 minus theta 2. That means argument of z1 by z2 is theta 1 minus theta 2. What is theta 1? Argument z1. What is theta 2? z2. That means the argument of the ratio is difference in the arguments. Just like log a by b is log a minus log b. Again, you know, argument z1 by z2 is argument of numerator minus argument of denominator. Right? And one more thing. In all these cases of argument z1, z2 is argument z1 plus argument z2. Don't expect the argument of z1, z2 obtained with the help of this result to turn out to be a principal value. May not be. This may not turn out to be the principal value of the argument, but this will tell you one of the values of the argument. If you know one of the thetas, then from there you can find a theta which lies in the interval minus pi to pi, and you can back calculate the principal value of the argument if required. Right? Similarly here also, argument z1 may be principal value, argument z2 may be principal value, but the difference need not be a principal value of the argument of z1 by z2. Yes or no? Is that all right? So there is, first of all, you know, there is nothing cardinal about a principal value of the argument of a complex number. It's just that, you know, one value with which we can relate no matter where we are and what we are doing. If we want to talk of one value of the argument and we want to talk of the same value, then, you know, we choose to look at a value which lies in the interval minus pi to pi, and we call it the principal value. But other than that, cos of theta, whether theta is principal or not, sine of theta, whether theta is the principal value or not, will be the same, because all those values of theta are commensurate with the same final position of the rotating line, and therefore their output in terms of cosine theta and sine theta is going to be the same. Right? Again, see, z1, z2 is r1, r2 e power I theta 1 plus theta 2, right? Now, if I have to take the conjugate of this complex number, z1, z2 is a complex number, and if I have to take the conjugate of this complex number, all that I need to do is, I need to plunge a minus sign here. Right? So that's going to be r1 r2 e power minus I theta 1 plus theta 2. Yes or no? right? Now this could be written as R1 e power minus I theta 1 into R2 e power minus I theta 2. Yes or no? But what is this? Z1 bar, yes or no? If Z1 is this, then Z1 bar is R1 e power minus I theta 1. So this is Z1 bar. What is this? Z2 bar. Therefore, bar of the product will be product of the bars. This is bar of a product of complex numbers, and this is product of their bars. Is that okay or not okay? Important property. Right? Similarly, if Z1 by Z2 is a complex number, then its bar of the whole thing, bar of the ratio is going to be R1 by R2 e power minus I theta 1 minus theta 2. Yes or no? Right? This can be written as R1 e power minus I theta 1 divided by R2 e power minus I theta 2. Yes or no? But what is this? Z1 bar. What is this? Z2 bar. That means bar of a ratio will be ratio of their bars. Bar of a ratio will be ratio of the bars. Right? Got me? All's good? Now, if Z, which is A plus IB, is a complex number, where A and B are real numbers, A and B are real numbers, then like I said, Z bar is going to be A minus IB. Now if A is a real number, then what would be the bar of A? If A is a purely real number, will be A itself. Bar of a purely real number would be the number itself. Yes or no? Why? See, a purely real number lies on the x-axis. So A will lie on the x-axis. Yes or no? If A is a purely real number, it will lie on the x-axis anywhere. Right? Its mirror image about the x-axis would be this only. That means this number coincides with its bar. So bar of a purely real number is going to be the number itself. Yes or no? And conversely, if I have a number such that its conjugate is equal to the number itself, then I can claim that the number must be purely real. That means that's a converse of the result. If I find that there is a number of which I do not have knowledge, but I figure out that the conjugate of this number is the number itself, then I can conclude that that number must be purely real. A must be purely real. Okay, A is a purely real number. So A is A plus I into 0. Yes or no? Isn't it? What is A bar? A minus I into 0. So A is A equal to A bar. Right? Yes or no? Either way you want to, or geometrically it's best. If A is a pure, the conjugate of a number is its mirror image about the x-axis. So if A is a purely real number, it lies on the x-axis. Its mirror image about the x-axis would be this itself. So this is not just A, but is also A bar. this is a number A as also A bar, as also A bar. Now, if P is a purely imaginary number, if P is a purely imaginary number, that is, say, I into B, where B is a real number, then this is a purely imaginary number. Then what would be P bar? Minus IB. That means if P is a purely imaginary number, bar of P would be minus P. Bar of P would be minus P. Is that fine? And conversely, if there is a complex number such that its conjugate is negative of the number itself, then you can conclude that the number must be purely imaginary, So far so good, right? Now, if Z is a complex number, say x plus iy, right? Then Z bar is going to be x minus iy. What is x? X is real part of Z. What is y? Y is referred to as imaginary part of Z. Right? Now, Z plus Z bar is twice x, which is twice real Z. Yes or no? Now, if I have a number Z1 bar Z2, if this is a number Z1 bar Z2, and if I take the conjugate of this number Z1 bar Z2, and if I take the conjugate of this number, conjugate of the product would be product of the conjugate? That's right, Z1 bar into Z2 bar. But Z1 bar would be Z1. This is going to be Z1 Z2 bar. Right? Yes or no? That means Z1 bar Z2 and Z1 Z2 bar. Z1 Z2 bar and Z1 bar Z2, they are conjugates of each other. Yes or no? They are conjugates of each other. Do you all relate to this? These are conjugates of each other. The bar of this will be this, and the bar of this will be this. Right? So, like I said, Z1 plus Z bar is twice real Z. Right? So, if I have, say, Z1 bar Z2 plus Z1 Z2 bar. Right? Suppose this was Z. Suppose this was Z. Then this is going to be Z bar. This is going to be Z bar. So this is like a Z plus Z bar. That's going to be twice real Z. That's going to be twice real Z. Real Z means this. Z1 bar Z2. Yes or no? Do you understand this? Lost? No? Why is this the conjugate of this? Okay, let me take the conjugate of this and figure it out, right? Let me take Z1, Z2 bar, and let me take the bar of this. Now, the bar of the product would be product of the bars. That's a property. So, that's going to be Z1 bar, Z2 bar, bar. But z2 bar bar is the same as z2. So that's going to be z1 bar z2, right? So they are conjugates of each other, right? This one, suppose this is z, will this not be z bar? Because this is what I said, this is the conjugate of this. So this is the conjugate of this. They are conjugates of each other. Did you understand that? So if this is z, this will be z bar, and z plus z bar is twice real z, right? Z is z1 bar z2. And one thing, real part of z, would you want to believe is the same as real part of z bar? Would you want to believe this? Because if z is this, z bar and z both have the same real part? Yes or no? And would you not want to believe imaginary part of z is minus imaginary part of z bar? Imaginary part of this is y, imaginary part of this is minus y. So imaginary part of z and z bar differ in sign, Take cognizance of all of this, please, and make sure you have assimilated these properties. All's good? Complex, not all that complex, right? Huh? Okay. Can I remove the clutter from you? All's good so far, right? Now, like I said earlier, two things. One, mod z squared is zz bar. Yes or no? Right? I also said mod of, or rather, z1 plus z2 bar of the sum will be sum of the bars, right? This is like z1 bar plus z2 bar. Yes or no? Now, let me look at mod of z1 plus z2 whole square. Let me look at mod of z1 plus z2 whole squared. z1 and z2 are two complex numbers in general. Now, if this is z, then mod of z squared would be zz bar, means this into bar of this. Yes or no? So this is going to be z1 plus z2 into bar of z1 plus z2. Yes or no? Mod z squared is z bar. That's the property deployed here. Mod z squared is zz bar. You want me to explain that? No? And this you understand, right? So think of this as some z, z1 plus z2 as some z. So this is like a mod z squared, which is z into bar of z. Is that okay now? Now, bar of the sum will be sum of the bars. Bar of the sum would be sum of the bars. Yes or no? All's good? Okay. See, z suppose is x plus iy, right? What is z bar? X minus iy. What is mod z? Root x square plus y squared. So what is mod z squared? X square plus y squared. Yes or no? That's mod z squared. Now, what is z bar? x plus iy into x minus iy. A plus b into a minus b. A square minus iy square. I square is minus 1, so this will become plus y squared. So this is like a x square plus y squared, which is mod z squared. Did I establish this property yesterday? Right? Okay. Do you understand this also a little while ago? So now you understand this formation? Very good. Okay. Can I just remove this? Create some room here? Now, z1 into z1 bar is mod z1 squared. Yes or no? z1 into z1 bar is going to be mod z1 squared. z2 into z2 bar is going to be mod z2 squared. Then I have z1 into z2 bar plus z1 bar into z2. Yes or no? How about it? Now, like I mentioned earlier, they are conjugates of each other. So z plus z bar is going to be twice real z. If this is z, this is z bar. And z plus z bar is going to be twice real z. Yes or no, Jayesh? Right? So this is going to be mod z1 squared plus mod z2 squared plus twice real z1 z2 bar. Yes or no? That's mod z1 plus z2 whole squared. An important result, a regulation result, mod of z1 plus z2 whole squared is going to be mod z1 squared plus mod z2 squared plus twice real z1 z2 bar. Yes or no? In a similar manner, you would want to independently establish mod of z1 minus z2 whole squared is mod z1 squared plus mod z2 squared minus twice real z1 z2 bar. This I will leave to you to establish in exactly the same way. Mod z1 minus z2 squared is mod z1 squared plus mod z2 squared minus twice real z1 z2 bar. So these are two regulation results. These are two regulation results. You want to keep them available all the time. Right? Now if I add these two, that's a third important result. Mod of z1 plus z2 whole squared plus mod of z1 minus z2 whole squared is twice mod z1 squared plus mod z2 squared. Remember this result. Yes, please. Okay, I'll explain. So do you understand this? Z plus Z bar is twice real Z. Is this comprehensible? Okay. Now suppose I take Z as Z1 Z2 bar. Suppose I take Z as Z1 Z2 bar. Alright? Then Z bar is going to be Z1 Z2 bar of this. Yes or no? But bar of the product would be product of the bars. So this is going to be Z1 bar into Z2 bar. But Z2 bar is going to be Z2. Z1 bar Z2. which means that z1 z2 bar and z1 bar z2 are conjugates of each other, right? So if I add z to z bar, will I not get twice real part of z? Real part of z means I have chosen z as z1 z2 bar. I have chosen z as z1 z2 bar. Yes or no? So if z is z1 z2 bar, then z plus z bar is going to be twice real z, which is z1 z2 bar. Got me? No, it's only in an initial stage when when you are beginning to develop bonhomie with the subject that you face these issues. But what really happens is constant interaction with the subject and thinking regularly and all the time about it will bring you to that state of friendliness where you will be able to play with things at will, right? This is what would happen. So it's only a initial gestation period, when something alien is trying to cut inroads into your system, when the system might offer some resistance, but actually these are simple things, so don't worry about them. In the initial stages, go over these things again and again, time and again, and you'll find that they'll oblige. Okay, can I wipe this off? Yes, please.
Z1 plus Z2 whole bar, will that be same as the subtraction as well? Like Z1 minus Z2
Bar of that would be bar z1 minus bar z2. Did I establish that properly? Yeah, or maybe I asked you to prove it yourself. I prove z1 plus z2 bar is z1 bar plus z2 bar. Similarly, z1 minus z2 bar is going to be bar z1 minus bar z2. Bar of the difference would be difference of the bars. Bar of a sum would be sum of the bars. That's the manner in which you want to remember all of this. Is that okay or not okay? And one more thing, all these classes are uploaded on the LAN the same day. In the event you want to come down and watch them another time, feel free, because don't leave anything unattended. Don't leave anything half understood at this point of time, because we are trying to build that foundation in you, and this should not be weak. Okay, by and large, leave the classroom with everything understood. Ask me to explain the same thing 100 times if required. It's all right. I'm perfectly fine with it. But try and understand just about everything that I'm communicating. Stop me any number of times and I'm in no rush. Okay, can I wipe this off? So here we have three more results, this one and this one, all of which you must again remember. Can I wipe this off? So far so good, right? Although there are a myriad other properties on complex numbers which I would have liked to communicate, but no, this is our first stint with complex numbers. I will have to still stick with some basics and rudiments. There is a great amount of geometry involved in things here, but we'll have to come back to those things later on. But one more thing before I eventually tell you that you have been able to learn the things that you ought to be knowing right now on complex numbers. One more thing, very often we talk of cube root of unity. Very often we talk of cube root of unity. Cube root of unity means 1 to power 1/3. That's cube root of unity. And I want to be able to find all those values of x that will satisfy this. All those values of x that will satisfy this. Somebody's mobile in action? My God. First of all, switch that off. 2. Change your ringtone. Next time, if anybody's mobile springs into action, we'll have real drama going on in the class, right? We'll. I know. Just this is why I'm telling you this in advance. This is the first time it has happened in the class, and therefore, message for everyone. Uh, don't get me wrong with the fake smile that I'm carrying on my face. Next time, this very thing will give the rest of the people in the class unadulterated entertainment. Right? You will come here and perform. They will like it better than the class. Trust me. And if somebody else's rings, then you would be on this side and you'll thoroughly enjoy what's happening. So now, when I say cube root of 1, there are values of x that will satisfy this. Of course, one of the values of x that you already know that satisfies this is 1. Right? One of the cube roots of 1 is 1, which is a real cube root of 1, And you have bred familiarity enough with real numbers. But then, let me find all possible values of x, real or complex, that will satisfy this. All of the values of x, real or complex, that will satisfy this. Now, if x is 1, cube root of 1, x cube must be 1. X cube must be 1. Yes or no? That means x cube minus 1 must be 0. Then all values of x that will satisfy this will be referred to as cube roots of unity. Cube roots of unity. This is x minus 1 into x squared plus x plus 1 equal to 0. Yes or no? This gives me 3 values of x. X minus 1 equal to 0 will give me the real cube root of unity. X is 1. And x square plus x plus 1 equal to 0 will have roots alpha and beta, which are complex cube roots of unity. Why the roots of this are complex? Refer to the discriminant of this quadratic. Discriminant of this quadratic 1 minus 4, which is minus 3, which is less than 0. So if the discriminant of a quadratic is negative, its roots must be complex, right? Its roots must be complex, right? If there is a quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0, what is its discriminant? B squared minus 4ac. For this quadratic to have real roots greater than or equal to 0. But if it turns out to be less than 0, that means the roots of this must be complex, right? This quadratic a is 1, b is 1, c is 1. B squared minus 4ac is minus 3, which is negative. Therefore, the roots alpha and beta of this quadratic must be imaginary or complex, right? That means there are 3 cube roots of unity. One is a real one, x equal to 1, and the other cube roots of unity alpha beta are roots of this equation, and they must be complex. Those must be complex, right? So alpha beta, the roots of this quadratic, are the complex cube roots of unity, Okay. Now, whatever be a cube root of unity, if alpha is a cube root of unity, then alpha cube must be 1, whether it's real or complex. Yes or no? If beta is a cube root of unity, then beta cubing beta should also give me 1. Yes or no? Now, realize that alpha into beta, the product of the roots of a quadratic c by a, all of you know that, right? So 1 by 1, product of the two complex cube roots of unity would be 1, right? Alpha beta is 1, right? Where alpha beta are what? The roots of this quadratic, and they are also complex cube roots of unity. They are complex cube roots of unity. Now, this one I can write as alpha cubed. This one I can write as alpha cubed. Right? Because alpha is a cube root of unity, alpha cube must be 1. If beta is a cube root of unity, beta cube must be 1. Yes or no? Yes, confused? If 2 is a cube root of 8, then 2 cube must be 8, isn't it? So if alpha is a cube root of 1, then alpha cube must be 1. If beta is a cube root of 1, then beta cube must be 1, right? Did you understand this? It will give me 3 roots. X equal to 1, which is one of the roots of this. See, all roots of this will be the cube roots of unity, right? Because x is, we started with cube root of 1, right? This gives me a real cube root of unity, which is 1. And this equal to 0 gives me 2 other roots, alpha and beta, which are complex. So the 2 other values of x emerging out of this are complex cube roots of unity, right? You understand that? So alpha, beta, the roots of this quadratic are the complex cube roots of unity. Now, what is alpha into beta? C by A, product of the roots of a quadratic. All of you know that, right? Or no? No? So alpha into beta is 1. But 1 can be written as alpha cube, because alpha cube, right? So this gives me beta equal to alpha squared. Yes or no? That means if alpha and beta are 2 complex cube roots of unity, then one of them must be the square of the other one. One of them must be the square of the other one. Yes or no? Yes, sir. Right? That means if one of the cube roots of unity, say alpha, is referred to as omega. Suppose I refer to alpha as omega, which is a conventional symbol for cube roots of unity. If alpha is omega, would you want to believe that beta is omega squared? Yes. Would you want to believe that beta is omega squared? Yes or no? Right? So beta then would be omega squared. Right? So if omega is one of the complex cube roots of unity, then omega square will be the other complex cube root of unity. Yes or no? And omega squared, that is alpha and beta, are the roots of this quadratic, x square plus x plus 1. Yes or no? Right? Omega and omega squared. Omega is like alpha, omega squared is like beta, are the 2 complex cube roots of unity. And are also roots of x squared plus x plus 1 equal to 0. Yes or no? So then we end up getting 3 cube roots of unity. One of them is x equal to 1, which is a real cube root of unity. The other one is omega and omega squared, which are roots of this quadratic. They are the complex cube roots of unity, right? Now, what is alpha plus beta? Minus 1, sum of the roots of this quadratic, minus b by a, minus 1. Right? Alpha is omega, beta is omega squared. So omega plus omega squared is minus 1. Right? Yes or no? Or 1 plus omega squared is 0. Yes or no? Okay, if this is a quadratic, what is the sum of the roots? Minus b by a. So if alpha, beta are the roots of this quadratic, alpha plus beta is minus 1. Right? So alpha plus beta is minus 1 by 1, minus b by a. but alpha is omega, beta is omega squared. So omega plus omega squared is minus 1. So where omega and omega square are complex cube roots of unity, 1 is a real cube root of unity. Do you realize that the sum of all the cube roots of unity add up to 0? This is a real cube root of unity. These are the two complex cube roots of unity, and they add up to 0. They add up to 0. Yes or no? Sum of the three complex cube roots of unity must always be 0. 1 is a real cube root of unity. Omega and omega square are complex cube roots of unity, and they are roots of this quadratic in X. They are roots of omega and omega squared, which are alpha and beta respectively, are roots of this quadratic in X. Yes or no? All's good so far? No? Now, after all, let me give you another interesting thing. Omega is a cube root of unity. So, its cube must always be 1. If omega is a cube root of unity, its cube must also always be 1, right? Now, omega and omega square, the two complex cube roots of unity, alpha and beta, let's say, which also happen to be roots of this quadratic, x squared plus x plus 1 equal to 0, x square plus x plus 1 equal to 0, right? Now, this is one, this is another one, right? Now, if I square this one, if I square this cube root of unity, right? If I square this, I get omega to power 4, which is omega into omega cube, but omega cubed is 1, so this is omega. So, the square of this is this, and the square of this is this. Yes or no? So, the two complex cube roots of unity are squares of each other. When you square this, you get this. And when you square this, omega to power 4, you get omega into omega cubed, which is omega, which is this. So, the two complex cube roots of unity are squares of each other. They are squares of each other. The two complex cube roots of unity are squares of each other. Clear? Now, after all then, what are the two roots of this? The omega and omega squared, I can solve this equation using Sridharacharya. So, this is like x is minus 1 plus minus root minus 3 by 2a. Yes or no? This is minus half plus minus, this is root 3i, because root minus 1 is I, so this is root 3i. Yes or no? So if any one of them is referred to as omega, the other one must be omega square. So if I choose to call, say, omega, and it's my choice, it does not matter, because each one is the square of the other, right? So if I choose to call omega as minus half plus root 3 by 2i, then omega square must be the other root, minus half minus root 3 by 2i, yes or no? Yes or no? If I choose to call minus half plus root 3 by 2i as omega, then root minus half minus root 3 by 2i must be omega square. The two complex cube roots of unity, they must be omega and omega square respectively, right? And do you realize they are conjugates of each other? Do you see that they are conjugates of each other? So omega square is the bar of omega, and omega, this is the bar of omega square. Is omega square bar? Yes or no?
So since alpha and beta are the complex roots of unity, alpha cube is equal to 1, beta cube is equal to 1. So we can't say alpha cube is equal to beta cube, therefore alpha is equal to beta.
That's one of the possibilities. But in this case, they are distinct. See, that you can say in the domain of real numbers. That's exactly the distinction that I'm trying to put across to you. That's if alpha cubed is beta cubed, then if alpha beta were known to be real numbers, then yes, alpha equal to beta. But if alpha beta are complex, then this may not hold good, like it does here, right? If the cubes of two real numbers is the same, then those two real numbers must be the same. But if the cubes of two complex numbers is the same, they are not the same. They are not the same.
Are they never the same, or they are not necessarily the same?
They are, no, one of the possible trivial values is alpha equal to beta. That's a trivial value, right? That's one of the values. But that will give me, let's say, a real value of alpha. But if I know that alpha and beta are complex, so one of the values, of course, you know, I can always say omega cubed is omega cubed, isn't it? Alpha cubed equal to beta cubed, one of the possibilities is alpha equal to beta. But this is a situation in which in this quadratic where alpha is not equal to beta. Do you see that? So alpha equal to beta is ruled out. Why is alpha not equal to beta? Discriminant is not 0. So the roots are not equal. So if alpha is not beta, then alpha cubed equal to beta cube does not allow you to permit you to conclude that, right? So the two complex cube roots of unity, they are not only squares of each other, they are also conjugates of each other. They are also conjugates of each other, right? Yes, please. No, if the coefficients are all real numbers, then the two complex roots will be conjugates of each other. They can never be equal. They can never be equal. However, if even one of the coefficients is found to be not real, then my assertion that complex roots occur in pairs gets invalid. Only if one of the coefficients is at least complex can that happen. But otherwise, complex roots of any polynomial, complex roots of polynomials, let's say a quadratic, let's say to begin with, can never be equal provided the coefficients a, b, c are all real numbers. That can never happen, right? Now, minus half is cos 2 pi by 3. Yes or no? Cos 120 degrees. And root 3 by 2 is actually one of the values, one way it could be written as sine 2 pi by 3. Yes or no? Right? So now, let me look at omega, one of the complex cube roots of unity, right? Omega is minus half plus root 3 by 2i, which is minus half I write as cos 2 pi by 3. Root 3 by 2 I write as sine 2 pi by 3, right? Take it easy. You carry the strength of an ox in your little finger. Okay. Do you all register this? One of the complex cube roots of unity, right? Cos theta plus I sine theta. What is that? e power I 2 pi by 3, e power I 2 pi by 3. Right? Omega square must be omega bar. Omega square must be omega bar. So if omega is this, what is omega bar? E power minus I 2 pi by 3. That's omega bar. Right? Look at this, omega bar. I'm saying if omega is this, what is omega bar? E power minus I 2 pi by 3, right? But do you realize that omega bar is also omega square? Omega bar is also omega square. Right? Because the two complex cube roots of unity are conjugates of each other. The two complex cube roots of unity are conjugates of each other. So omega bar is the same as omega squared. Difficult? No, no? So if one of the complex cube roots of unity is e power I 2 pi by 3, the other complex cube root of unity is going to be e power minus I 2 pi by 3. And if I have a complex number z which is r e power I theta, what is the modulus of this complex number? R. If I have a complex number which is e power I theta, what is the modulus of this complex number? 1, because this is 1 e power I theta, yes or no? Now, what is omega? 1 into e power I 2 pi by 3. What is mod omega? 1. Mod omega is 1. That means the modulus of a complex cube root of unity is 1. Okay. Omega square is this. No? Which is 1 into this. What is mod of omega squared? 1. That means the modulus of the two complex cube roots of unity will always be 1. 1. Their moduli is the same. What? Right? All's good. So 1. There are 3 cube roots of unity. There is one cube root of unity which is real, which is 1. The other 2 cube roots of unity are roots of this quadratic. They are complex because the discriminant of this quadratic is less than 0. Right? If alpha and beta are the 2 complex roots of this equation, they are the 2 complex cube roots of unity. And we have figured out that alpha and beta are squares of each other. So if one of the complex cube roots of this is omega, then the other one must be omega square. Then we figured out the sum of the 3 cube roots of unity is 0. Why? Because omega plus omega square, the 2 roots of this would be minus 1. So 1 plus omega square must be 0. That means this is one real cube root of unity. These are the 2 complex cube roots of unity. Right? And they always must add up to 0. Then omega and omega square are roots of the same quadratic. You would then expect them to be conjugates of each other. They have the same modulus, but their arguments are like 2 pi by 3 and minus 2 pi by 3 respectively. And again we figured out omega and omega square are complex, but they have the same moduli. The modulus of omega is the same as modulus of omega squared, and each is equal to 1. To summarize things in a nutshell. Yes, please. You want to take the other way around? I can, okay, let me just swap their roles. It does not matter actually. You know, no book in mathematics says which one you would want to take omega and which one omega square, because if I actually took this one as omega, if I actually took this one as omega and I square this, I will get this. So it does not matter, you know, which one you want to take omega and which one you want to take omega squared. I mean, I could have just interchanged rules. Suppose I took omega as minus half minus root 3 by 2i. Right? This is cos 2 pi by 3. Right? This is cos 2 pi by 3. And minus sine 2 pi by 3. I. Now, cos theta is the same as cos minus theta. Cos theta is the same as cos minus theta. Minus sine theta is sine minus theta. Minus sine theta is sine minus theta. I. So cos theta plus I sine theta is e power minus I 2 pi by 3. So I could have taken this omega, and when I square this, I'll get the other one. It does not matter. Because, see, the moment I wrote one is the square of the other one, I had not fixed which of the two is going to be omega and which one omega square. Because if this is omega, then this is also the square of this. So any one of these could have been taken omega, and then the other one would automatically turn out to be omega square, for the simple reason that they are squares of each other. They are squares of each other. So it didn't matter. Right? Confusing? No? So far so good. All's fine, right? So now, couple of things which you were not able to factorize when you were in junior class, because you didn't have any inkling of complex numbers. Now in the complex number regime, you'll be able to factorize those things. For example, if I had like a squared minus ab plus b squared, an expression of this kind. Going back, taking a step back into algebra. Okay. Suppose I had an expression of this kind, a square minus ab plus b squared. I'm sure you couldn't find a way to factorize this when you were in junior class, because you were not equipped enough. But now, if I had to factorize this and were given the liberty to use complex numbers, then realize that omega plus omega squared, if omega is a cube root of unity, omega square another cube root of unity, that must add up to minus 1. That's a property that we just learned. Right? So if minus 1 appears anywhere, it could be written as sum of the two complex cube roots of unity. It could be written as the sum of two complex cube roots of unity. Now there is an occurrence of minus 1 here, and I'm at liberty to write this minus 1 as omega plus omega square. Yes or no? Can I do that? AB? Now, if 1 appears anywhere, then that 1 could always be written as omega cubed. 1 could always be written as omega cubed. Yes or no? Right? So this 1 I can write as omega cubed. Yes or no? So plus b squared omega cube. Right? This is like a square plus omega ab. Huh? No, you could, but it'll do no good to us. That's why. I mean, if I'm choosing to factorize, I would rather be judicious and try and get factors out of it. Such would be my manipulation. If you choose to write omega cubed into a squared, and this also omega cubed, then it'll do you no good. But any one of them should be omega cubed. I mean, if you did this as omega cubed and a squared and left this as b squared, then also it would have been fine. So a square plus omega ab plus, now this term and this term I combine and I take like a omega square b common from this, omega square b common from this, I get like a plus omega b. Yes or no? Omega square ab and omega cube b squared, I take like a omega square b common from this, so a plus omega b, and this I take a common, this is also like a into a plus omega b plus omega square b into a plus omega b. Yes or no? This then is like a plus omega square b into a plus omega b. That's a square minus ab plus b squared. So a squared minus ab plus b squared has a standard set of factors which is like a plus omega b into a plus omega square b. Two standard factors for a square minus ab plus b squared. These are the two factors. Confused? Where? No, I am never saying roots, I am saying factorize this. I was just choose. Yeah, that's what I did. Why can't you? Why can't you? I wrote this minus 1 as omega plus omega squared and this 1 as omega cubed just to be able to pull out these factors. In order that I could pull these factors out, I performed this manipulation. And from now on, this should be looked upon as a standard result for the sake of our class. A square minus ab plus b squared is a standard result now. Do you all understand how I factorize that? Now in this, replace b by minus b. This is an identity. Every time you factorize something, what is it that you produce? You produce an identity. By the way, do you all know what an identity is and what an equation is? What's an equation and what's an identity? Let me just take a little detour and check if all of you know what equations mean and what identities mean. What's an equation? Can anyone just very quickly tell me what's an equation and what's an identity? Yes. Oh yes, very good, very good. An equation is a statement not true for all values of x. Say for example, x plus 1 equal to 0 is an equation. It's a statement. And it is true only for some values of x, not for every indiscriminate value of x. Whereas if I said x minus x equal to 0, is this an equation or an identity? This is an identity. This statement is true for all values of x indiscriminately. Right? You know what I'm saying? So if I had, say, x squared minus 1 is x plus 1 into x minus 1. Is it an equation or an identity? It's an identity because this statement is true for all values of x. An equation, however, will have limitations. It will not be commensurate with all values of x. It might be commensurate with infinite values of x, but not all. You know what I'm saying? See, for example, sin x equal to, say, half. Right? It's an equation. Although there are infinite values of x that will satisfy this. X equal to 30 degrees. 30 degrees plus 360 degrees. 30 degrees plus 360 plus 360 and then plus 360 and then plus 360. There are infinite values of x that will satisfy this, but not all values of x. I mean, you can't say, hey, take x equal to 25 degrees. That's not going to satisfy this, right? So an equation is a statement which is true not for all values of x. An identity is a statement which is true for all values of x. That's the difference. Got me? Now, so in that context, if you factorize something, you are actually producing an identity. If you factorize something, you're not producing an equation, you are producing an identity. For instance, in this you could plug in any values of a and b in this, and you would find that this left hand side will be equal to that right hand side for any and every value pair AB. For any and every pair AB. Are you very clear in your heads about the distinction between an equation and an identity? So a factorization is always an identity. Right? Now, let me replace in this identity b by minus b. In this identity, let me replace b by minus b. Then I get a squared plus minus b squared will also be b squared. That must be a minus omega b into a minus omega square b. Replacing b by minus b, leading us to another standard result. Leading us to another standard result. And so a cube plus b cube, for example, is going to be a plus b into a square minus ab plus b squared, which is actually a plus b, and this has these as factors, a plus omega b into a plus omega square b. Similarly, a cube minus b cubed will turn out to be a minus b into a minus omega b into a minus omega square b. Regular results. These are all regular results. Now, a result which for some reason, I missed out. Let me just take a few steps back and get you tuned to those two results which I missed out. Please copy this.
The statement a plus omega b into a plus omega b whole square. It can be written as a plus omega square b whole square, because omega is equals to omega square.
No, I never said omega is equal to omega square. Did I say omega is omega square? The two complex cube roots of unity are not equal. They are squares of each other. If you square omega, you get omega squared. If you square omega squared, you get omega into omega cubed, which is omega. They are squares of each other, but they are not equal. Such is the apparent paradox offered by complex numbers. See, you are used to a very typical domain of real numbers in which, if you find each one is the square of the other, you would be tempted to conclude and believe that they are equal. But in the domain of complex numbers, that is no longer true. So we have a new set of things coming our way when it comes to complex numbers, right? Is that okay so far? A result which you would want to independently obtain at home is a square plus b square plus c squared minus ab minus bc minus ca is a plus b omega plus c omega squared into a plus b omega square plus c omega. Is another standard result. I would want you to, break your heads over this and try and obtain this all by yourself. You might at least, let's say, at the beginner's level, just multiply terms here out and see if it turns out to be this, given the fact that omega cubed is 1, given the fact that omega to power 4 would be omega, given the fact that omega plus omega square is minus 1. In fact, what are the various powers of omega? So omega to power 1 is omega. Omega to the power 2 is omega squared. But omega cubed is 1. Omega to power 4 is omega into omega cube, which is omega. Omega to power 5, one more omega will come, it will become omega squared. Omega to power 6 will be omega cube, which is 1. Similarly, omega to power 7 would be omega. Omega to power 8 would be omega square, And then you see the same set of numbers appearing. 1 omega omega squared, 1 omega omega squared. So the various powers of omega will be restricted to 1 omega and omega squared. Any power of omega would either be 1 or be omega or be omega squared. Anything to power 0, real or complex, will be 1. Right? Make sense? If z be a complex number, say r e power I theta, then what is mod z? R. Mod z is r. What is argument z? Theta. Now, if z is this, then what is z power n? R to power n e power I n theta? Yes or no? Tell me. Raise both sides to power n, and then laws of indices ab to power n is a to power n into b to power n. In doubt? E power I theta whole to the power n. X to the power m whole to the power n is x power mn. N into I theta, which is I into n theta. Right? Now, so if z is a complex number, z power n is also a complex number. Now, what's the modulus of this complex number z power n? But what is r? Mod z. R is mod z. So this is mod of z to power n. So mod of z power n is mod z whole to power n. So if I had like mod z squared, that's going to be the same as mod z whole squared. If I had mod z to power 20, then that's going to be mod z instead raised to power 20. Right? You should be very particular about the axis of rotation of your neck. So this, in this part of the world, would mean no, and this would mean yes. So when you say this, I'm terribly confused. And again, you know, don't obtain your own rules. If you have partially understood and partially not understood, don't do this. Inclined at an angle 45 degrees, partially understood, partially not understood, right? So let's be very, this yes, this no. So if you say this, I will assume it's no. I faced this story at IIT Madras because my South Indian professors and South Indian friends would do this, and they actually meant this. It was a lot of confusion in the initial days, and then I figured out that, you know, when they make these subtle movements of the neck, this or this, I should, instead of focusing on the actual movement, I should look at their expressions. That will tell me more about whether it's a yay or a nay. Okay, so mod of z power n is mod z whole to power n. That means n and modulus operators are interchangeable, They could be swapped. N could go up, right? Similarly, what is argument of z power n? Is n theta, But what is theta? Argument z. Theta is argument z. So this is n times argument z. So argument of z power n is n times argument z. Does it ring a bell? Log of a power n. Log of a power n is n log a. Right? So very similar looking, similar operator. Right? there were three things that history threw upon us at different times. One was this exponential e, right? Which came at some point of time. Then there was pi, times immemorial, right? And then modern day times, there was this I, which is square root of -1. And you know, a host of algebra and geometry was devised around this I. So historically, you know, if I had to break history into regimes of mathematics, I would talk of pi, age old, followed by E, and then eventually I, right? At different times and in different contexts, these three things came up. E, I, and pi. And eventually, how they got beautifully connected. E power I pi, for example, is cos pi plus I sin pi. Yes or no? Sin pi is 0, cos pi is -1. Cos pi is -1. -1. And this is 0. So this gives us e power I pi plus 1 equal to 0. The family eventually came together. E, I, and pi. Right. And I can also be written as 0 plus 1 into I. 0 plus 1 into I. 0 is cos 90, 1 is sin 90. Yes, yes or no? 0 is cos 90, 1 is sin 90. So this is cos pi by 2 plus I sin pi by 2. Right? Cos theta plus I sin theta, which is e power I theta. So this is e power I pi by 2. That's I. I is an imaginary number, right? I is an imaginary number. I is e power I pi by 2, for example. Let me raise I to the power I. Let me raise I to the power I. Right? This is e power I pi by 2 whole to the power I. Yes or no? I into I -1. So this is e power minus pi by 2, which is a real number. Which is a real number. E power minus pi by 2 is a real number. Whereas, so a complex number to the power complex number can actually be a real number, can actually be a real number. A complex number, I is this. This to the power I is this to power I, right? A to the power m whole to the power n is a to power mn. So I into I square is -1. So e to power minus pi by 2, which is a real number. E power minus pi by 2 is a real number. So a complex number to power complex number could be a real number. A real number to the power real number is always real? Hey, there you got caught. Real number to the power real number. What is it? Is it real? This is I actually. So real number to power real number can actually be a complex number. This is I actually. Yes or no? Right? A complex number to power complex number can be a real number. A real number to power a real number can actually be a complex number. Yes or no? This is square root of -1, which is I. Right? Got it? Make sense? My objective in this initial stint with complex numbers, which is over by this time, was to at least get you acquainted with downright basics. All right? Because every now and then, you know, even in physics and in other topics of mathematics, the moment I say complex numbers, I don't want you to have a vague idea of complex numbers. Now you are way beyond that vague idea. You are reasonably ensconced with the notion of complex numbers. Just that, you know, a few more sophisticated layers added over it will do the trick. But then those layers will remain pending for a while till such time that, you know, you've acquired enough maturity to be able to deal with those things. But as of now, we are way past school. Way past school. Whatever they would have covered in school in complex numbers, you are past that. Alright, so you can actually go to your school and offer a class on complex numbers. You can teach complex. No, again, you know, mind what I'm saying. Don't go ahead and tell your teacher that I'm going to teach you what I've learned from this joker here. Alright? Just say, sir, for the benefit of the rest of the students, you are too tired right now, you know. Let me take some responsibility and ease out your burden. So be kind to him, benevolent. He should not feel humiliated. Alright? And don't start dropping names like Euler and so on and so forth. Okay? Just stick to what he is taught in the class for his consumption or her consumption. You know what I'm saying? So be aware of the sensitivity involved in the whole game. Be at least externally respectful of his presence, or rather lack of it. So it was important to at least communicate these ideas, because not only will it be useful towards this topic which is already way back covered in your school, also the trigonometry problem solving that I'm going to undertake, you know, once we have this ammunition with us, you'll realize that we'll be very powerful in terms of our problem solving capability in trigonometry. I'm going to use this every now and then, here and there. There is a sheet that was administered upon you. Alright? Now, I don't want you to, you know, look, if you have already attempted that sheet, it's okay. But if you have not, all that I want to tell you is you are equipped enough to attempt the sheet by this time. You should go back home, attempt the sheet. Wherever you're stuck, post it on the group. When you post a problem on the group, some things that I want you to take notice of. One, if you want me to read, make sure that the font size is not in angstroms. Alright? Make it sizable enough for someone like me to be able to read. Right? Because I will never zoom in, zoom out tremendously, you know. Make it and make the pic very clear. And even before I solve the problem for you, I will wait for the rest of your friends to, you know, take a plunge into it. And then once I figure out that no one is keenly interested in solving the problem, I intervene and oblige. Alright?